Welcome to this Gobeshona Global Conference session on strengthening locally led climate action, in which we will be looking at the role of technologies, ecosystem-based approaches, and such as ecosystem-based adaptation, partnerships, and finance. And this event is organized by UN Environment Programme's Global Adaptation Network, or GAN for short. And my name is Anna Kilponen, and I'm the host on behalf of GAN. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention that this is a 90 minutes session, which is being recorded. And all of our speakers today will be presenting in English. But should you like to listen to the session in Spanish, this option is also available, thanks to our interpreters, Nuria and Yvonne. So for those of you who would like to join in Spanish, please see on the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's an interpretation button that you can click and choose Spanish language. We also have a chat box open during the session, so please feel free to engage there and post your questions to our speakers for the Q&A session at the end. So here's our agenda for today. And as you can see, we have a really interesting lineup of speakers who will be sharing some of their experiences and examples of their work in the context of building local resilience to climate change. And we'll be kicking off the session with an introduction by Tamara Kojer from World Resource Institute, who is also our moderator for this session. And then after Tamara's presentation, we will be diving into the four sections of our session, each of which will be focusing on a different area of local action. And we'll be hearing from work done in an urban context from Thailand, Philippines, and Sierra Leone, after which we will be hearing about ecosystem-based adaptation in El Salvador, new climate technology that is being implemented in Burundi, and the fourth section of the session has focused on adaptation financing. And then we will have a Q&A session at the end. Hopefully we will have time for that. But so before we get started, I did want to know a bit more about our audience. So and do a little bit of a Menti engagement with you. So for this, I would like to ask our participants to scan the QR code on the screen, or you can also go to the menti.com and insert the code that you see on the screen, which is 29845434. So either screen the QR code with your device or type the code on the screen when you go to menti.com. So I will then put up the Menti presentation where we already have some responses. So our first question is, which region are you joining us today from? And we have quite a few people joining from Asia and Europe, but also from Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean. So if you want to join, you can go to menti.com and type the number 29845434. And it looks like Latin America and the Caribbean is catching up. And we also have 2 participants joining from Africa. Okay, let's go to the next question. Which is, what country do you primarily work in, or which country or countries? You can insert multiple countries into this one. So I see Asia Pacific. We also have global, working in the global level, El Salvador, Netherlands as well. South Africa, we also have Panama, France, and Mongolia, as well as Bangladesh and Germany. Pretty good, good range of countries. And then the last question, question number 3, is what sector do you represent? So here we have the options for intergovernmental organization, NGO or civil society organization, government, research or academia, private sector or other. And it looks like we have majority of our participants are working for intergovernmental organization. We also have a couple of others, NGOs and governments, and research and private sector as well. Okay. Yeah, feel free to continue inserting your answers. The survey is open for everybody, as long as you just join in the Menti. So with that, I am going to hand it now to our moderator, Tamara, who will be setting the scene for our session and will also moderate the event. So Tamara is a senior associate at the World Resources Institute, where she works on the climate resilience team to advance international climate adaptation efforts. And her recent work has focused on locally led adaptation and adaptation monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So with this brief introduction, Tamara, I'll hand the screen over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Anna, for the introduction and for having me. I'm really excited to be here for this great event and to hear from all of our panelists. Like Anna mentioned, I'll just start with a quick presentation sort of overview on locally led adaptation, just to kind of get us on the same page and provide some framing for the session. But I'll try to keep it brief, just because I think many of you here probably are already very familiar with locally led adaptation and the concept. If you're here participating in Gobeshona, and I also want to make sure we allow enough time for our panelists. So I will try to keep this brief. Let's see, can everyone see my screen? Okay, perfect. Great. So just to provide some context, what we mean by locally led adaptation compared with other approaches to adaptation that we see is really that this is about kind of recognizing the value of local knowledge and expertise and the importance of making sure that we're elevating that expertise in order to effectively address climate change and climate risks. It's really about ensuring that local communities, organizations, small businesses, other local actors, governments who are on the front lines of climate change, that these groups have equitable access to both the climate finance and other resources like climate information that they need to adapt to climate change, and also that they have access to decision-making processes and that they have agency over the decisions that are made about those adaptation investments. So it's really, I often refer to agency as sort of the key operative word here, that locally led adaptation is about agency and not just participation or inclusion.
Oh, Tamara, would you be able to put your presentation on a full screen, the presentation mode?
Oh, is it not in?
I don't see the full presentation.
Sorry about that. It looks like it is on my side. Let me just try again here. How about that? Is it still in?
It's still in, not in the presentation mode.
Okay. How about that?
Yes, now I can see the full screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. Thanks, Anna, for jumping in. Okay. So is everyone seeing just the front opening slide then? Okay, great. So just to note, essentially this slide just kind of covers a lot of the relevant research that's been done on this topic. And to note that the locally led adaptation movement really builds on a lot of the many other existing movements that came before it, and research and advocacy around community-based adaptation, around localization of humanitarian and development support, so that that this didn't come out of nowhere, but it builds on the legacy and the hard work and contributions of especially local partners to get us to this point. And that a lot of this research that has been done has established kind of what are the gaps and why it is that we need to have this focus on deliberately promoting locally led adaptation and decentralizing finance and decision-making power to the local level. So we have these 8 principles for locally led adaptation that I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with. And these principles essentially provide a framework for what it actually can look like or should look like to put locally led adaptation into practice, and kind of break down, what this really means. So as you'll see, these 8 principles, they cover devolving decision-making, addressing structural inequalities, providing patient and predictable funding, investing in local capabilities, making sure that we're providing and building a robust understanding of climate risk and uncertainty, so that would include diverse types of climate information and knowledge, scientific, but also local, traditional, indigenous, experiential knowledge and information, and ensuring flexible programming, transparency and accountability, and collaborative action and investment, both horizontally and vertically. So it's not about local only, but about vertical integration across levels, to ensure we're investing in the most effective and equitable adaptation solutions. And again, why locally led adaptation? We're still seeing a growing evidence base around the outcomes and best practices around locally led approaches, which we'll hear more about later. But we do have growing evidence on the effectiveness of locally led approaches and how making sure that adaptation is context specific and does reflect local priorities can lead to more effective solutions, can be more efficient, and also promotes distributional and procedural justice. It's still important, of course, to integrate equity and deliberately address social equity in any adaptation approaches, but locally led adaptation helps to address some of those vertical inequities. The challenge, if locally led adaptation is so great, why do we need to be kind of talking about it and promoting it? Why isn't it happening right now? And yeah, we're seeing multiple different kind of, as we're looking at climate finance, seeing that the fact is not enough finance is reaching the local level to be able to adequately address adaptation needs. And for example, this one stat that we have on there is just one illustrative, relatively recent statistic around, less than 1% of ODA going directly to local development actors. So that's not specific to climate change, but an indicator kind of the challenge that locally led adaptation is seeking to address. And a lot of this is, there's a whole myriad range of reasons, but it's in part due to indirect climate flows, that climate finance flows that go through large intermediaries and can kind of hamper access. So seeking to get more direct climate finance flows. There's other factors that are involved, such as complex application processes, different reporting requirements that make it more challenging for local organizations to be able to access climate finance. And systemic issues, as well as those kind of more administrative ones around power disparities and the lack of role for local partners being built into that system. That said, even though there is we do have these challenges that we're working to confront, we are seeing growing political commitment on locally led adaptation, more and more every year, which is really excellent to see. You know, we now have 16 national governments who've endorsed the principles for locally led adaptation. We're seeing locally led adaptation come up more and more in influential dialogues and discussions, such as the annual COP conferences. So I think it's really, we're kind of seeing a sea change, and it's been great to see this getting higher and higher on the agenda. And just some more indicators of kind of how locally led adaptation is picking up and becoming more of a priority for organizations. We now have more than 100 organizations total who've endorsed these principles for locally led adaptation, and this represents a pretty diverse range from local civil society and grassroots networks to funders to international NGOs, research organizations, quite a wide range. This is just kind of a selection of some of those organizations to give you a sense. And another, I think, important piece to note is just that locally led adaptation is already happening all over the world. And so we have lots of great examples that we can learn from, and again, more that we should be adding to this map that we're going to hear from today. So there's lots to look to, and I think it's an important to remember that this is being done, and even though there are challenges to overcome, that it's happening, and so there's lots that we can scale and replicate from these different examples happening around the world. This is just a small selection. So with that, thanks so much. I'm gonna hand it over and start to introduce our panelists, and happy to answer any questions on kind of the kind of general principles of locally led adaptation as well later on. So yeah, to jump into it, we're going to start with a couple presentations in our first segment, which is focused on building resilience in urban areas and strengthening local resilience for urban communities. We have a great selection of panelists that I'm excited to hear from. So I'll just go ahead and introduce Anne, Tessa, and Eugenia, and then I'll hand it over to Anne to kick us off. So Anne Marome, Dr. Anne Marome is an associate professor in urban planning at Thammasat University in Thailand. She's a founder of Thammasat Urban Futures and Policy Research Unit. She has a PhD from University College of London and is an expert in urban development planning, urban resilience, climate adaptation, sustainable future cities, urban governance, and also works closely with the Thai government to promote sustainable and resilient cities. Then we'll have Dr. Tessa Mariama Cespino, who's a licensed agriculturalist with more than 20 years experience in agricultural extension work. She has a PhD in agricultural education from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Tessa became part of the core team, which led initiatives that provided people access to agricultural produce and basic needs during the height of the COVID pandemic restrictions in their city. And she's also part of the EPIC network, which enabled her to implement those projects that address the needs of their city's lakeshore communities. And then after Tessa, we'll have the pleasure of hearing from Ms. Eugenia Carbo, who is the Chief Heat Officer in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Eugenia is Africa's first Chief Heat Officer, and in this role, she's supporting a range of anti-heat initiatives from tree planting to waste collection and awareness campaigns. She has over 10 years of experience in a range of sectors, including sanitation, entrepreneurship, emergency response, and she's worked in the banking industry prior to becoming Chief Heat Officer, and then joined Freetown City Council, where she's been involved in a range of environmental projects to encourage tree planting, reduce deforestation, and support youth empowerment and employment. So really excited to hear from these esteemed speakers. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Anne to kick us off. Over to you, Anne.
Hello. Thank you, Tamara. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for a very beautiful introductions. And also, I would like to thank Gan for inviting me to be part of this panelist. So I would like to start by a little bit of introductions of who we are. So basically, the research unit that we are working on, we committed to resilience, inclusive, and sustainable city. So the way we work, we also work with different urban sectors like from housing, spatial planning, social engagement, and sometimes it's about institutional design as well. So today I would like to focus just one examples. And if you're interested in our work, please feel free to visit our website. And we also provide policy recommendations for local government as well. And these are our network so far. Since we work on global issues, so global collaboration is very important. And this presentation will very much focus on a very important network called EPIC-N, where we're able to link university and city need together. So what is EPIC-N? EPIC stands for Educational Partnership for Innovation in Communities. At Urban Futures, we also a coordinator for Asia, and also I serve at the board as well. So this is the our partnership so far. And we Thammasat also engage with many faculty as well in EPIC-N. EPIC and also promote SDGs. And what is EPIC-N really? Um, as many cities in the world facing with limited resource and access new knowledge, and where university have a lot of knowledge and also innovations that can provide to cities. So basically, EPIC model is simple, and so we match the needs of the city with capacity of universities. So under the EPIC model, lecturers do not have to implement a new course or programs or anything. They can simply use what they already had and integrate the works for their students to assist the cities. So this is how we use EPIC-N as a model to provide local adaptation or urban climate resilience. So EPIC-N can involve with many approaches. It can be engaged in a early stage of consultant work by engaging students to work with a real project. So this is the EPIC-N network in Thailand so far. We hope that the university would work with nearby cities since it would be easy. However, many lecturers are free to engage with many cities as they can. So we are also planning to include international collaboration in near future as well, particularly in university in Singapore with the need of the cities. So these are EPIC and university in the world, and these are universities in Asia that use EPIC-N. So move to what I do, how I use EPIC-N as a model to promote urban climate resilience. This is a real project where British government funded Bangkok government. It's part of the Global Future City project. In this case, the project focused on transit-oriented development, but it's not just simple TOD, but it's also equitable. So by doing this, we work as a university, as Thammasat University, we work with international consultant. The key focus that I want to explain today is adequate housing and promote resident district. So these are the teams. Okay, so let's start by how my student engage using EPIC and in equitable TOD projects. I take the class that I actually lead. It's the urban planning studio of the last year of student in undergrad. So there are about 40 students and the timeline was about 3 months. And also we invite guest lecturer from the Equatorial TOD project, international consultancy to give lecture in the class as well. So the student able to use the site to do urban planning surveys. And also they come up with the design strategy, master planning, and using like planning instrument to promote equitable TOD. So within the real project, the student work feed into a kind of like basic information that actually, promote the real work. So in TOD plan, we have strategies like, how to promote adequate housing and also equitable TOD. So we went into the ground as well and do a lot of like participatory design. And in this process, I also engage my master students who they are more specialized in community planning to help with the design workshop with the low income community and cultural heritage community as well. And in the real consultancy work, we also promote a guideline at two levels. The first level is at district levels, and the second level is more strategic, more detailed design guideline. And we come up with the framework how we're gonna promote equitable TOD. The one that relate to urban climate resilience is the healthy and responsible and sustainable development, where we try to bridge between mitigation and also adaptation. We promote design in terms of safe and walking and cycling, and also promote green and blue assets that you can promote adaptation in the local area. So in terms of the informations, we have to develop many layers of data and informations to promote integrated strategies. Also, existing open spaces, the existing density, how we can, distribute growth, not just on the main road, but also inside the lane as well, inside the building blocks. And these are example of focus areas that provide a more design guideline that can promote adaptation and mitigation. So in terms of design strategies, you can see that one of the threats, we focus on flooding and climate change. And in order to come with the design strategy, to what extent we should provide facility and utilities in the TODP areas, we also consult with the larger climate risk indicators. It's happened that in this district is called Pasir Jalon. The risk level is quite moderate. And what kind of urban development strategy need to be in place? We found that housing unit is pretty low, so that's why we come up with adequate housing as a main strategies. And also employment rate in that district is quite low. So in the time of crisis, or to promote growth, we also have to promote more jobs in the area as well. So because of this, the visions translate into action. So there are two key actions to promote affordable housing and resilient district in some part of the TODP. So this is an example. We ensure that we have enough green and blue space in the spatial district that promote climate resilient and also provide affordable housing for the newcomer to be, to use the benefit from the TOD, the transit-oriented development. And of course, because of all this, be able to link to SDGs goals as well. And to what extent these equitable TOD relate to local government, we also link it back to different level of policy. Of course, we have to comply with city policy, also the decision maker or governor policy, and also the larger level policy is national strategic plan. So we can be able to link the TODP visions with the key strategies of Bangkok development. The example is Bangkok also want to become resident, but how to translate that action into the ground, into the district. So we're able to provide guideline at that local levels. And we also give them like the level of implementations. Like, of course, if it may be complex strategy, of course, you may require more time, maybe more different steps or harder steps to, like take longer term for the real implementation. So I think this is it, for the example how we adopt EPIC as a model and work with our students and also benefit local government, in this case is Bangkok. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne. That's really, really interesting and great to hear about your work. And just quickly before I hand it over to Tessa, a reminder to participants that we'll be holding questions and answers for all of our panelists until the end of the session, but you can please go ahead and use the Q&A function to go ahead and add your questions as you think of them, and then we'll collect them and address them at the end. So over to you, Tessa. Please go ahead.
Evening, everyone from the Philippines, and I'm here to present about, actually, this one is actually a component of a much bigger project that we had with EPIC. It's entitled Enhancing Health Sanitation Among Lakeshore Communities in an Urban Area Through an Effective Communication Campaign Plan, the case of our city, Calamba City, Laguna, Philippines. And with this project, I work with Dr. Maria Ana Kimbo from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Just to give you the outline of the presentation, it would be from the rationale up to the ways on how we will move forward. So just to give you a picture of the communities that we have worked with. So these are the pictures of the lakeshore communities of the city of Calamba during flooding. And as you all know, in the Philippines, it's not really that it really is very common for us to have flooding whenever there are rains, and prolonged flooding also means floating garbage in floodwaters, which also enters not just roads but also the houses of the fishing communities of our city. Hence, the project aimed to promote the health and sanitation measures among lakeshore communities to ensure the well-being of its members, as highlighted by SDG 3 and SDG number 6. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is the partnership that we had. It's made possible through the EPIC network, the framework that Dr. Ann was discussing earlier. So it's between the local government of Calamba and the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. And looking at it closely, you will see that under the local government unit, there are actually 4 departments working for this project. So there are the list. It's the Agriculture, the Environment, Information Office, and the Disaster and Risk Reduction Management Office. Under the community, there are actually 3 organizations that we have worked with: the barangay officials or the community leaders. The Farm It's actually a fishery community organization. The Bantay Lawa, or the volunteers that takes care of the lake. And also for the academy, we work with the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, particularly this class, the DevCom 208 class, which is the communication approaches in development programs. So just to give you also the picture, we had this project while we had the strictest restriction during the COVID pandemic. And so we had the inception meeting, and we had several coordination meetings with the class and with the fisher folks and the other members of the community through this kind of platform. So because the class would not be able to visit the community, it was the personnel from our office, from the local government, who bridged how the class will be able to communicate with the community members. And because the community members do not have access to technology or internet access, all of them have difficulty in having internet access. It was the local government personnel which gathered them and then set it up for them to communicate with the class. So after several meetings, the situation analysis and dialogues with between the class and the community members. So the initial communication plan was and prototypes were presented by the class. So it says there tayo ang lawa, which means we are the lake, encouraging the on ownership and how to take care of the lake. So these are what I'm going to flash are just some of the prototypes of the IEC materials that we distributed in the community. So it contains the local emergency numbers, city ordinances, or legislations pertaining to the illegal use of plastic and styrofoam in the city. We also have had IEC materials discussing the effects of the use of plastic and styrofoam and 5 steps to zero waste written in Filipino for community members to easily understand. We also have information laid out in calendars. Actually, this was the request of the community members because they find it useful and effective as they still really use calendars in their household. So I'm just showing a picture on how they how these IEC materials were distributed among women in the communities, among men in the communities, where the tarpaulins were placed in conspicuous places in barangays for the community members to see. And also, these IEC materials were also distributed to children pertaining to these materials contains good practice on solid waste management, which use a lot of picture. And after a week, we had a focus group discussion among household leaders, women, and youth of the 10 lakeshore barangays to know the feedback for these IEC materials. And these are just some of the outcomes, but I'm just going to discuss the important points. So they found the IEC materials or the information education campaign materials to be simple enough to understand. And also the calendar is not only helpful because it served its purpose very well, but every time they look at the calendar, they are also reminded of the information about the environment whenever they look at it. And also the calendar, during the feedback, it was stated that the calendar provided a creative and improved way of correcting their neighbors when it comes to solid waste management. So it's a subtle way. Instead of them just telling it directly, they just give the calendar. And also the tarpaulins. The tarpaulins were placed in conspicuous places in communities, and this provided a more permanent reminder to community members. No, and also the youth members and younger children, they find the materials clear, concise, and simple, and they are encouraged to share this with their classmates, with their playmates, even the young children. The insights on the communication campaign plan is that though there is massive amount of information available online pertaining to environment, how to take care, how to take about climate change, how to take care of the lake, there are still communities and community members who do not have access or have limited resources to navigate the digital world. Hence, there's still a need for the printed IEC materials to reinforce information and message regarding health and sanitation. And when it comes to information and legislations, they're already existing. So there's no need to formulate new ones. We just need to enhance awareness among the existing ones. And the use of the local language is an important aspect to make the IEC material more understandable to the community members. It's also found that engagement of community members in the formulation of the communication campaign plan that translates to a more proactive stance because they feel that they are the ones who formulate the campaign plan, so they need to adhere to the health and sanitation measures. So overall, the partnership resulted to encouraging results on the part of both the community, the academe, and the local government. Actually, it can be observed that the project highlighted the systems thinking as it showcased how a particular problem in the community can be addressed, while the academe, different offices, and the local government, community members work together while providing their respective inputs, insights, and expertise. So and how we're going to move forward, we're looking forward for continuous partnership among departments in the local government. We're looking forward for a collaboration with schools, especially in the 10 lakeshore communities. We are also looking forward in engaging community members through further trainings and seminars. Also, creating awareness on climate change, sustainability of project gains through engagement with local government unit officials. So that would be all. Maraming salamat po.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tessa. Thanks, especially for all those great learnings that I feel like would be applicable to many other different types of work on, not just making information available, but accessible, providing it in different formats, importance of local ownership, really great learnings there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So our next speaker is Eugenia Cargo. Eugenia, I'm going to hand it over to you. If you have a presentation to share, please go ahead and share your screen and let us know if you have any technical difficulties. And let us know if you can hear us okay. I know that you were having some audio trouble. But Eugenia, over to you. Do you want to give Eugenia another minute, or we can move on to come back to Eugenia?
I think maybe we can move ahead and hopefully she would be able to join maybe at the end.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Eugenia. Hopefully we'll be able to sort out the technical challenges there. But just in the interest of time, since we have so many great speakers to hear from. So we'll just move on. We'll move on to our next segment, which is around harnessing nature for climate resilience. And then we'll come back and hopefully get a bit more of the urban resilience piece from Eugenia afterwards. So I'll introduce our speakers. So next up to cover nature, we have Hector Velasquez, who is a Salvadorian coffee producer and exporter, who's received multiple awards for his coffee and is a two-time winner of the Cup of Excellence El Salvador Prize. He has a degree in architecture from Wentworth Institute in the United States and an MBA from AADEN Business School in El Salvador, Argentina, and Spain. And Hector is also a participant and beneficiary of UNEP's City Adapt Climate Change Adaptation Project. So I'll leave it there, and then after Hector's presentation, we'll turn it back to Eugenia. So Hector, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share our experiences with the program with you guys. I'm going to present to you what we've done in my country, El Salvador, in harnessing nature for climate resilience. We've done, well, first of all, El Salvador is located in Central America. We are a very small country, but we are located in an area which seems to be one of the most affected areas by climate change. We're in San Salvador. The farm is located at the tip of the volcano. You see there's a corner that says San Salvador. At the top left, we're in the volcano, and we have a lot of problems with excess rain lately. Even though we are in the dry corridor of Central America, we get the worst of the both ends. We get a lot of dry weather and get a lot of wet. Yes. And that increases the risk for disasters. The city of San Salvador is located at the base of the volcano. And so it's in a very high risk area. And because of the change in the behavior of the climate lately, the risk has increased. If you see, there's a lot of gray in that picture, and most of that gray is in a slope. And what you see at the top left-hand corner is the volcano, and you get a lot of runoff from the volcano, and therefore you get a lot of floods down in the city. Because of that, the city at that project decided to develop this program in our city, and they just didn't decide to tackle the lower part of the city, but they decided to start the program where the problem begins, which is at the very top of the mountain. And I'm located at the very tip of the mountain, so that's where the risk comes. Maybe we can move to the next slide, and you can see the next one. There we go. There you can see where the impact of the project is, the percentage of the urban grounds, and the percentage of the coffee plantations. And the risk is higher at where the coffee plantations are of landslides. So if we start working at the origin where the risk begins, it's a lot cheaper than working where the disaster happens. So we've used very low-tech economical solutions that have a very big impact downstream. Instead of helping the people after the floods, we were preventing the floods. And we've done that doing very simple stuff. We did a lot of infiltration ponds, but mini ponds. And that has helped in improving, not only decreasing the risk of runoff, but also has secondary effects which are great for everyone, not just for the farmers and not for the city dwellers, but for everyone. Because if we get more infiltration of the water, we prevent runoff. By preventing runoff, we prevent for soil erosion. And soil erosion happens when you have a lot of runoff at high speed. That takes away the fertile topsoil. So if you keep the topsoil, you improve the fertility. And if you improve the fertility, you improve the infiltration of water, and you also have other effects which are great, which is you improve the productivity of the farms. And by improving the productivity of the farms, you help the economical development of the areas. So you stop migration, because the problem with these huge, with the capitals and with all these huge cities is that people start migrating from the countryside to the cities because of lack of work or low wages. So if you help in developing and improving the development of these rural communities, you help the environment indirectly. And the impact of this type of programs is multi. It happens in a lot of points. So very small actions can have a huge impact, and that has helped a lot. In our case, maybe we can see you can see how many cubic meters we've helped infiltrate of water, and that's very important in an area, and in an era of lack of running water. The San Salvador volcano is the biggest sponge of our city. So everything that rains in the volcano, it's absorbed by the volcano, and then we have all of natural springs that are at the bottom, at the base of the volcano. And that's what feeds the running water of the city. So it's in the best interest of the surrounding urban areas for us to help infiltrate as much water as possible. And another thing that happened in the project is that we planted a lot of trees, and that helps in helping reforestate areas that have been deforested by either planting cash crops, which are inadequate to the areas because they used to plant beans and corn in very steep slopes, which is detrimental to the environment, and it's not the appropriate area. So now that we're planting fruit trees, shade trees, and coffee, which is a permanent, it would develop into a permanent forest that will help mitigate a little bit temperature increase, runoff, and a lot of negative aspects. And it's also helping bring back the ecosystem that we had. We're seeing more birds and more small mammals in the area, which is great. I mean, I believe that it's been a successful project. We would love to have it for a longer period of time, because this is not just a one-time deal. And maybe we could show the other slide, please. There you can see that's a landslide that we had. And we've worked in that same space like 3-4 times. So the solutions are not a one-time deal. I mean, working against the environment and its forest, which is huge, you have to do things once, twice, or as many times as needed. And that is very cash intensive, and it's very also time consuming. But we've had very positive effects, because even though you see the landslide, you see at the bottom of the picture that there's some tree trunks that are in a horizontal position. We've used what we had in the area to make those tree trunk walls, and there's stones at the bottom. So that piece of work did what it was supposed to do. Because with a small landslide like that, at 1,800 plus meters, it picks up a lot of speed downhill. So it might seem very small over there, but if we stop it small, it prevents it from being a disaster downstream. And there was a risk management issue that was worked with the government to see how dangerous was for this quite small landslides, what the effect was going to be down in the city, and the effect was huge. And we've had events like this before, like in 1981, we had a landslide in which about 200 people died, and it all started pretty much in the same area. So doing this low tech, not economically intensive solutions has a huge impact. Maybe we can move forward. And we're using endemic species also. We're not trying to change the environment. We're just trying to bring it back to what it was before. Because all of the species that are endemic to the area have an impact in the ecosystem. There are certain birds, butterflies that like certain trees, certain flowers, certain fruits. And we found that that works pretty well. And also it's easier for those plants that have already adapted to the area to develop faster. One thing that we've done with planting all these trees is that it's like a multi-pronged system, not just doing the mechanical prevention of the dead and live barriers that we've done, but also by planting the trees, we create this huge web that prevents soil from moving forward. I think I forgot to tell you guys, but this farm, we had a fire that burned about 75% of the farm. So we had no organic matter whatsoever left. That's pretty much why we started doing all of these barriers, because we had a lot of landslides. So this program helped a lot by utilizing what we had at hand, which is something that I really recommend to everyone, is that you have to evaluate what you have, and sometimes adapting the solutions to the place that you're gonna use that system. Because to give you an example, they decided that we were gonna do a system in which we dug these little trenches in this farm, but the inclination of the mountain was so steep that what happens is that in the first rain, that little pond filled up very fast and it liquefied the land around it. So instead of minimizing the risk, it increased the risk. So the solution that works in one place doesn't work in the other. However, you have to adapt. I mean, there's always a solution and there's a trial and error part of this. But the community is very wise in recommending what can happen. Like the person in charge of the farm was like, listen, this is too much of a risk. And we did it anyways, and we found out the day after that it didn't work. But then we started doing what people did in the area for a long, long time, and it works. And now it has helped us not to bring back the farm 100%, but it's coming back. There's a lot of also the economical impact is very, very nice because you provide work to people in the area, and most of the times when you have ecosystems that are degraded, the local economy is degraded as well. So the better the ecosystem is, the more chances people have of making a living. And those programs also have an impact on how people live in the area. And I think we can move forward. I think I spoke a little bit about this, and we have to listen to what people do, what people did, and try to be constant, because this type of work is not just like a one-time thing. I mean, you have to pretty much try to convince people that what they're doing is going to have a very positive effect upon them in the long term. Because if they believe it, they're going to keep on doing it, even if the project ends. So the best thing that can happen is for people to believe that what they did is the best thing for them, because then they're going to keep on doing it, which is very positive in this type of projects. Can we move forward? And I think that was it. Thank you very much for your time, and keep on doing what you do. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hector. This is really fantastic to hear about that project. Lots of really, really important lessons learned, I think, on how you were saying the importance of these relatively simple, very specific, locally driven solutions to help prevent disasters. Important lessons, I thought, that spoke to kind of the importance of patience in adapting to climate change and importance of integrating local and traditional knowledge. So really, really some more great valuable lessons learned. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So looks like unfortunately we haven't been able to get Eugenia back on the line. So we'll just move along for now to our next speaker, who is unfortunately not Omar, but fortunately we have his fantastic colleague Lillian taking his place due to some additional technical difficulties. So I'm going to introduce. Sorry.
I think my internet connection is working again. So
fantastic, great. Well, great to have you, Omar. Wonderful. Omar, glad we were able to get your technology to work. Omar Sala is the director of Zephyr Consulting, which is a company that offers a range of streamlined flood and drought resilient solutions, like innovative mobile flood barriers called Slam Dam. Omar has lots of experience in the water sector and a Master's of Science from the University of Amsterdam. He's lived and worked in many different countries, including the UK, South Korea, Singapore, the UAE. And we're excited to hear from him and hear his experience. So over to you, Omar.
Yeah, thank you. And apologies, I couldn't join sooner, but indeed there were some technical issues. So I changed my location and now hopefully it works fine. So thank you for the kind introduction. Today I'll be presenting something about one of the solutions that we offer, as just mentioned by Tamara. It's called SlamDam. And we did a project for UNEP, CTCN in Burundi. That's where we demonstrated our solution, our SlamDam technology. So I prepared a few slides. I want to tell you something about the product itself and how we completed the project successfully, and also a new tool that we've developed last year that is also in combination with our SlamDam technology, something we offer now as well. So SlamDam is an easily deployable water-filled barrier that effectively enhances resilience to flooding and drought. It has been developed in the Netherlands in conjunction with the University of Delft. And SlamDam has a unique design and material combination, which is patented. It's made out of EPDM. That's where we differentiate ourselves from other solutions. EPDM is a flexible rubber that is also used underneath of roofs, for example, and it has some unique properties. And if you look at the design, so SlamDam is made out of two compartments that have to be filled with water. And in doing so, this design and material combination allows for a very effective solution, and it can withstand very high pressure from outside. So we have standard models and we can make tailor-made solutions. The standard models are 5 meters in length. They can be carried with just 2 people, and it's a modular system. So basically you can make it as long as you want. Because it's so relatively light, you can carry them and deploy them manually. If you have tailor-made solutions that are very lengthy barriers, that may take a lot of time, and you might need heavy equipment to deploy SlamDam. So especially because of this combination of the material and design combination, that we have some unique features. So it's easily deployed. It has a lifespan of more than 40 years, and even after the 40 years, it's 100% recyclable. That's also where we differentiate ourselves from our competitors, because normally they are using PVC-based materials, and these have a lifespan of more around 8 to 10 years. So our solution is a lot more durable. It's very effective. As far as we know, we are the only ones in this field that are TUV certified, internationally recognized certification. EPDM is also UV resistant, and SlamDam is multifunctional, and you can store fluids vapor tight, as I will show you. Another key advantage is that it's very easy to use, and that makes the product very scalable. It's a community-driven solution, and people don't need any technical backgrounds. They don't need any advanced degrees. We can train people fairly easily on how to deploy SlamDam. As you can see here, it is stored in stackable boxes. And when there's a threat of flooding, you take these boxes to the location, and with 2 people, you can carry them, and you take the flood barrier out, you roll it out, connect hoses and a pump to it, and then you can fill it with water. And when you fill it with water, you can very rapidly build up a very lengthy barrier. Depending on how many people you have, how many pumps you have, you can build up a barrier of a kilometer in a matter of a few hours. And that speed is of the essence. When there's a threat of flooding, you need to be quick to prevent damages. And when the risk is subdued, you can dismantle the barrier, empty it, and then roll it up again and store it in stackable boxes. It's also multi-purpose technology. You can use it as a bridge. You can use it to store fluids vapor tight. You can use it for chemicals, for oils. You can use it to contain fluids in a certain area. You can use it to control water availability for agricultural purposes, to increase crops production. So it's a very versatile product, as you can see, but the core function is still flood prevention. Now, coming to the project that we completed successfully in Burundi for UNEP and CDCN, we completed it last year. What we normally do in a project, and what we did here as well, is we first analyze the region, the area of interest, and we do this using hydrodynamic modeling software and field visits. This gives us an idea of what are the flood risks in a particular region? What are the flow velocities? What is the water depth? What is the flow direction? This gives us insight in how Slam Dam could help that community prevent damages from flooding. And that's what we did here in Burundi as well. And once we had a good idea of how floods could be protected using Slam Dam, we had an idea of what the length of the barrier should be, what the height of the barrier should be. And we manufactured the Slam Dam technology, sent them to the location, and Lillian trained the people in less than half a day on how to use Slam Dam, and they were fully equipped to deploy Slam Dam independently. And I think that's also a goal of ours, is that we want to make sure that communities are able to enhance resilience independently. They should be self-sufficient in preventing flood and drought damages. And in Burundi, the one big added benefit is that they are using Slam Dam also for irrigation purposes. So the water that is stored in Slam Dam, that is used to protect them from flooding, is then later on used for irrigation purposes during dry season. And actually, they have been using Slam Dam as a reservoir for the entire year. And finally, we also developed a flood intelligence service. That's a new software tool. And what this tool does, it does a comparative analysis anywhere in the world between a flood situation with and without measures, and the differences in damages between both scenarios. That is basically the benefit of the measure you would like to implement. Now that can be Slam Dam, can be anything else, can be digging out a channel. But what this tool then does, it gives insight in, if you implement a flood resilient measure or measures, how much damage am I prevented to residential land? How many people are you protecting? Of whom, how many are women? How many are men? Different age groups. And the tool gives insight in that information. And this helps in decision making what investments you should do in flood resilient measures. What is the return on investment? Now, we express these indicators in monetary values and non-monetary values. If you would do it solely on monetary values, you might discriminate against the poorer segments of society. So you can express the benefits in both monetary and non-monetary values. So that's in a nutshell what we did in Burundi. And I think the people are very happy and with the solution. Now we're even going to scale up in Burundi to create more benefits for the country. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Omar. Really cool to be able to hear in such detail about one specific innovation, and one that is so multi-purpose, supporting resilience and sustainability, and really fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So just a quick time check. We're running a bit short on time, unfortunately. All of our technological difficulties ate up some of our session time. So we will not likely have time for open Q&A at the end of the session, but the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen is still open. So please feel free to go and add questions in there, and our panelists can answer them in writing rather than verbally. So do feel free to do that. All right, well, I'm pleased to introduce our final set of panelists who will be speaking on the topic of innovative adaptation financing, which is very important and relevant for locally led adaptation. We have Nora Nyemi, who has worked for more than 10 years in climate change and dryland management. She's currently working with UNEP, managing the Global Ecosystem-Based Adaptation Fund, which is co-implemented with IUCN. Nora has previously worked with UNCCD, UNDP, and IUCN, implementing climate change resilience projects in the drylands of Africa and Southeast Asia. So really excited to have Nora with us. And Nora will be presenting with Yulia Rubleva, who has more than 10 years of experience working on a range of topics, including resource efficiency and high impact value chains, science policy interface, and management of various trust funds focused on supporting the shift towards more sustainable consumption and production, as well as ecosystem-based adaptation to climate change. So Yulia is currently with IUCN, And before that, she was working in the private sector as well as with various agencies in the UN system. So really excited to have both Nora and Yulia with us for our final presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tamara. I'll request Anna to please, yes, put up our slides. Thank you very much, Anna. So my name is Nora Nguyen, as I've just been introduced, and I'm pleased to present the background and introduction of the project. My colleague Yulia will handle the second part of this presentation. Next slide, please. So what is the Global EBA Fund? The Global EBA Fund is a catalytic mechanism that was set up to support innovative approaches to ecosystem-based adaptation with an aim of helping people and the environment to adapt to the adverse effects of climate change. So this fund is financed by the International Climate Initiative, which is under the Federal Ministry for Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection of Germany. It's implemented by UNEP and IUCN jointly, and it was started back in 2020 or launched back in 2020, and the implementation is expected to go on until June 2028. Next slide, please. So why was this fund set up? The Global EBA Fund was set up, as I mentioned earlier, to be catalytic, to be able to provide financing for innovations that are being implemented on EBA or on EBA approaches, and to be able to create an enabling environment to mainstream and scale up ecosystem-based adaptation. As mentioned, the fund does help or is supposed to help to overcome various barriers to scaling up ecosystem-based adaptation, and these are varied. This can include those related to knowledge, those related to various innovations, those related to finance, policy, and governance, and to engage in different strategic EBA policy mainstreaming, as well as incentivizing innovative finance mechanisms and private sector investment in the EBA space. Next slide, please. So before we move very far, I think we always provide a definition of what EBA is. So the fund uses the CBD definition of ecosystem-based adaptation, which, as you can see on your screen, is the use of biodiversity and ecosystem services as an overall adaptation strategy to help people to adapt to the adverse effects of climate change. Next slide. With this in mind, or just understanding what EBA is, we also undertook a detailed study to understand what some of the EBA barriers are, what are barriers to actually achieving ecosystem-based adaptation and using ecosystem-based adaptation approaches for resilience. This report was put together last year by UNEP. It's called Harnessing Nature to Build Climate Resilience. I will share the link in the chat box as after my presentation. And it addresses various things, various barriers related to awareness, knowledge, capacity, governance, finance, as well as just the limited space available for EBA. I would encourage you all to look through this report. It's quite detailed, but we do have an executive summary that's available in English, French, and Spanish, I think just for ease of access for different language speakers around the world, and just ensuring that knowledge is available in different languages. Next slide, please. So now more to do with the fund, which Julia is going to present further on. So the fund addresses three strategic objectives. One is related to awareness raising, the second is related to planning and governance, and the third is related to finance. The fund aims to achieve these three objectives, and all the projects that implement within the Global EBA Fund are expected to align with one of these objectives. This provides the what of a project. What are they addressing? Are they providing awareness raising or expanding knowledge within their area of work? Are they addressing issues to do with governance or gaps in policy? Or are they trying to access and provide sustainable short to long-term finances in order to apply EBA in their area of work? And related to this now, we have just recently introduced what we call the action pillars. Projects are expected to align to one or a maximum of two of these pillars, The first pillar there is levers for catalytic change. The second one is on functional data and science. And the third is on innovation for adaptation. So what does this include? Functional data, for example, can include utilizing traditional knowledge and technologies as was presented earlier in this session today. The levers for catalytic change can be utilizing policy as well as policy instruments to try and promote EBA and promote building resilience for the people using ecosystem-based adaptation, as well as innovations. We've just had Omar talking about an innovation for adaptation, for example, and such solutions are the ones we are looking for, different innovations. It doesn't have to be technological. It can be innovations in working through partnerships that are unusual, working through partners that are unusual, supporting new sectors that are not traditionally considered to be EBA sectors or aligned necessarily with EBA. And those could be the innovations related to adaptation. And now for more details on how to apply to the fund, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Yulia, for the next part of this presentation. Over to you, Yulia.
Thank you very much, Nora, and thank you, everyone. So now that we know what are the objectives and the strategic objectives and the action pillars of the fund, I'll talk a little bit more about further how to apply to the fund and what is it that we're looking for. So as mentioned by Nora already, we're looking for catalytic and innovative projects that help to create enabling environment for people to adapt to the adverse effects of the climate change through the use of biodiversity and ecosystem services. And the action pillars that Nora just presented, they have been developed to actually define better what is it that we mean by enabling environment. The projects that we're looking for should be between 50 to 250,000 US dollars. It is possible to request a higher amount up to $500,000. However, a clear justification here would need to be provided. The same goes for the duration. On average, the projects are 24 months. However, up to the maximum of 36 months can be allowed with a clear justification. Projects can be global, thematic, or targeting one or multiple countries. And when they are indeed focused in certain countries, all of these countries need to be ODA eligible countries. As mentioned already before, the projects needs to contribute to an enabling environment for the implementation of EBA and should align with the EBA qualification criteria and quality standards developed by the Friends of Ecosystem-Based Adaptation Network, or FIBA. So your project should aim to help create the enabling environment and ultimately lead to mainstreaming EBA and what is EBA and how to understand whether the project that you're looking into contributes to EBA. The FIBA has developed this qualification criteria, and we can look into them on the next slide, please. Thank you. And these criteria are based on the definition of ecosystem-based adaptation that Nora has just presented by the Convention on Biological Diversity. Here we have three main elements that each have a number of criteria. So 5 criteria under 3 main elements. So what is EBA? First, EBA needs to help people adapt to climate change through reducing social and environmental vulnerabilities, criteria 1, and by generating societal benefits, criteria 2. EBA should also make active use of biodiversity and ecosystem services. So it should restore, maintain, or improve ecosystem health, which is criteria 3. And EBA should be a part of an overall adaptation strategy and not a standalone intervention. So it should be supported by policies at multiple levels, and it should support equitable governance and enhance capacities of those involved. Next slide, please. What kind of applicants are we looking for? Who can apply to the fund? So this should be the organizations or consortia of different organizations that are well-grounded in the proposed area of work, have experience on the same size and type of project that they're proposing. What is very important is that it should be inclusive of local communities, indigenous knowledge and gender perspectives, and should partner with local organizations such as community-based organizations, local NGOs, and so on. Next slide, please. Who can receive the funds? So organizations receiving the funds should be legally recognized entities in the area where they're located. They can be local NGOs, international government, international non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, research organizations, think tanks, private sector, academic institutions, and so on. One thing to note about private sector companies, they can apply and they're definitely eligible for the funding as long as they can show that they're not making profit from the activities that they are doing with funds of the Global EBA Fund. At this point, UNEP and IUCN offices cannot receive funding as well as government agencies. However, as we encourage in this fund various innovative and unconventional partnerships, we really encourage the local governments and governments at any level to become parts of the projects. However, they cannot receive funding directly through the fund. And that is because Global EBA Fund is funded by International Climate Initiative of the German government, and they already have bilateral funding agreements with most of the countries. This is the reason why governments under the Global EBA Fund cannot receive funding directly. However, we definitely do encourage for them to be a part of the project of the consortium. Next slide, please. So as of this year, we have moved to a one-stage application process. We hope that this will simplify and give access to more organizations. Before we had multiple steps, and this led to a long review time and so on. So as of this year, we have made some changes in our application process. One of them is moving to a one-stage application process, meaning that only full proposal needs to be submitted. On the right side of the screen, you can see a little kind of list of all the documents that need to be submitted, and they need to be submitted directly by the lead applicant. So as I mentioned before, we do encourage diverse consortia of the project, and you need to identify only one lead applicant that would be submitting these documents and that would also undertake due diligence screening. However, all the consortia members, so other organizations that are part of this partnership that are submitting the project, do not need to undergo the due diligence process. So the list of documents underlined here includes the full project proposal itself, as well as, of course, the project budget, CVs of key staff involved in the project to help us understand that the staff that will be working on the project has enough capacity and understanding and knowledge of what EBA is, audited financial statements only of the lead applicant, as well as online submission form, the due diligence questionnaire, and ESMS screening questionnaire, which is environment and social management safeguards. And it is very important to note that all the application documents need to be submitted via email, and they also online questionnaire needs to be filled out. All this information is available on our website as well as in the grants procedures manual, and there's a lot of guidance and a lot of information in this document that you can go through. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. Next slide, please. No, just this one. I'll go through that quickly. So as of this year, we have introduced this another thing that we have introduced, which is two thematic tracks. One is a general thematic general track, and another one is thematic project proposal track. So under general one, there is no specific focus apart from that projects need to be catalytic, innovative, that support the creation of enabling environment for mainstreaming EBA. And thematic track will change throughout the year. And as the first theme, we have selected urban EBA due to its importance in the area of EBA. The application process is the same for both tracks, and the cutoff date, that is the next one that's coming up, is the 28th of April. And after that, we will announce the second cutoff date of this year. We normally have 2. And otherwise, application process is exactly the same. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on the contact email that you can see on the screen, or through a contact questionnaire on our website. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Yulia and Nora. This is a fantastic presentation to end with. Great to kind of hear from such a diverse range of experiences throughout the session, and then end with something so action-oriented, an actual opportunity for organizations to get involved and do some locally led adaptation. So thank you so much. We're over time, so I'll wrap up the session here. If you have any questions that weren't answered, you can please feel free to reach out to Anna, and she can help connect you to the right people or resources to help get those questions answered. Thank you so much to all of our fantastic panelists. Thank you to Anna, and thank you to all of you for joining us and sharing this experience.
Hi, can I just make a final request? Can we all just turn on our videos just to take a screenshot? If you can just stop sharing our screen.
Final photo.
Yep. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great, thanks, Nadia. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a good day.